All right. Last current event, Ben.
Yes.
This is all you.
So this one's a pretty deep one. I'm excited for this. I sometimes just go onto Google News and I search climate change because otherwise these don't come up on like your normal news feeds. And I found this article that's a New York renewables debate for subsidies. Specifically, the title is "The Billion-Dollar Debate Splitting New York's Renewable Energy Industry." So what is this about? Basically, there are a bunch of developers in New York, in the state of New York, who have planned clean energy infrastructure projects, right? These are offshore wind, onshore wind, solar projects. They have been slammed by inflation. These developers have agreed to projects that they bid on between 2017 and 2021. And since then, inflation has made them a lot less viable, or so they claim. However, one of the biggest renewable developers in New York State, AES, says that their claims that they can't run these projects and have them be viable is demonstrably false. Okay, so there's this organization in New York called the Alliance for Clean Energy, ACE. In June, ACE petitioned the state energy regulators to increase the price that they could sell energy at. Because usually the process for these energy developers to secure projects is there are annual bids, there are annual auctions on opportunities to develop new energy sources. And usually how this works is these developers will go in there and they'll go into the bid, and almost always the bidder who proposes that they'll sell energy at the lowest price wins. Okay, so the price is agreed at that point, but now ACE says, because it obviously takes time to develop these projects, they say interest rate hikes and supply chain shocks have made the projects no longer viable at the agreed upon prices. And so they want to apply a single adjustment formula to dozens of projects across the board, which would result in price increases on the customer from 43% to 73%. Those are not trivial. Those are big price increases.
I mean, we're talking almost double at that 73 number.
Yeah. I mean, and I did in the article, it does say that this is still only like $5 a month because utilities aren't that expensive.
Yeah.
But still, like 43% to 73%, that's a lot more than people expect to be paying.
And you're really trusting these corporations that these numbers are accurate. You're really trusting that. You know?
That's kind of what ACE what AES is arguing. ACE says they need to raise these prices to be financially viable, and ACE says that it's still cheaper than fossil fuel alternatives to sell the clean energy at these higher rates. They say this is their only choice, is to fund themselves with higher energy prices until the state signs off on more funding. But AES says, I don't think these projects actually do need more funding. AES thinks that they purposely underbid at auction so that they can secure the project, and then they can come back and petition the state for more money and hope that they get more government funding, because where they need the money, of course, is in the startup of these projects.
Right.
Especially these renewables, right? Once you have the infrastructure built out, it's really cheap to produce every new unit of energy. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we just need the money to build this out. But AES says, let the losers sink if they're losers. It contends that projects that fail may never be viable on their own in the first place and could be replaced by more promising ones. Now, AES has a good incentive to say this, because if these projects are allowed to fail by the companies that bid on them, then they go back up for auction, and AES, as one of the big developers, they can bid, right? And they can win the projects. So already a little bit of corporate fishiness.
Yeah, that's already a lot there.
Yeah. The push for higher payouts has also drawn skepticism from proponents of public power. So this is where I think both of us lie as the best case scenario, okay? New York has a burgeoning New York Power Authority that is gaining more and more power to make utilities public in New York State. And they have spent years arguing that relying on private developers and their profit margins put New York's energy transition on shaky footing. And this is kind of a great example of that. If these projects were all public utilities, we wouldn't have to worry about this problem of, are they asking for more government money just because they want to be more profitable? We can kind of trust that things are all being made at the level of the cost. It does bring up a bigger picture question about this process in New York, right? Because you have these annual bids on projects, and they're almost always granted to the developer that offers to sell energy at the lowest price. And so the State Energy Authority has actually publicly said that it's reconsidering the requirements, and it might ask for higher security deposits for developers who ask for price hikes.
That's a good future solution.
Yeah.
It obviously doesn't deal with what we're at now.
Exactly.
That's a nice thing to say after the fact, after you've been caught with, your hand in the cookie jar here and you're kind of screwed.
Yes.
Right?
Totally. So that's where the state is at. It's a tricky situation. It's interesting that it's not a fossil fuel developer that's saying this. AES is a huge renewables developer, and they're coming at this.
AES just wants to take over all this already built infrastructure here.
Yes.
Right? That's their incentive.
Totally.
If AES could take over all this stuff and ensure a lower price point, that makes me kind of favor AES.
Yes.
Right?
The problem,
okay,
of course, is it takes time to get these projects up and running. Mm-hmm. And the developers who have already bid on these projects already have the construction happening, right? Mm-hmm. The process is already in progress. And these processes can take so long because there's a bunch of permitting that needs to happen. Plus, you need to build things out, especially for offshore wind. There's like a huge wait for the supply chain issues as far as like you need some very, very specific types of vessels to enable building offshore wind facilities. So they have backlogs like years and years down the line. And we just had a huge discussion about how urgent the need for shifting to renewables is, for attacking climate change is. So I think the best solution is public utilities. I think in this particular case, the priority needs to be speed in getting these up and running.
Because I think the public utility takeover could happen later.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, that's what's happening in Maine. Don't forget, all you Mainers out there watching, your election is coming up 1 month.
Yep.
Early November. I have the date here. I looked it up. November 7th. Mainers will decide whether to initiate a public takeover of the state's 2 investor-owned utilities, okay? If you believe in public power utilities and you believe in putting power in the hands of the people when it comes to decisions like this, when rate hikes happen, what type of energy gets produced, where it gets produced, and you want it in your hands, not the private entities, go vote November 7th.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
But, so I agree that we should get these things up and running. I think I agree that we should get these things up and running. And then the public utility takeover could happen later. But if that happens, are we going to see those 50% utility increases?
Yeah.
If we let ACE go through with it?
Yeah. From my perspective, like pay $5 more per month for your utilities.
And ACE is still claiming that it's going to be cheaper than the fossil fuel alternative.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which it definitely will be.
Yeah, which we're about to get into in our deep dive.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be cheaper than the fossil fuel alternative. No doubt about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I would want more. I think I am on your side saying that leave it to ACE. I think I am because I complain when I get handed a coding project halfway through. I couldn't imagine getting handed building a windmill and a wind farm halfway through.
Yeah.
Right? I can't imagine doing that.
Absolutely.
And how much longer that would take.
And it's not even that simple, right? Because say like you're halfway through building a windmill. It's not like you're just going to hand that progress over to the other company, right? You're going to sell your materials or whatever. Maybe you'll be able to sell it to them, but maybe the manufacturing processes are different.